Hello. So this is my sort of live immediate reactions to the last two episodes of Doctor Who. I didn't have a chance to do this last week after the Ghost Monument because it was my cat's birthday, so we're having a birthday party. So I'll give my thoughts on both the ones I've just Rosa, which literally just finished premiering about an hour ago, and the Ghost Monument, which was last week's episode. First of all, again, this is going to be just a random stream of thoughts, so don't expect any carefully constructed thesis analysis of Doctor Who here. But yeah, so I guess production aspect, opening titles. So when the premiere of Series 11, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, broadcast, it was notably the first time in Doctor Who's 50 near give or take a month 55-year history, the first time we hadn't actually seen any opening titles in Doctor Who, depending on how you count Sleep No More, which technically did have opening titles. It was just not the normal ones, but still. So the first time in 55 years we didn't have any opening titles for the series premiere in any Doctor Who episode. So last week was the first time we saw the Series 11 opening titles. First time I saw them, well, I mean, we heard the new theme the week earlier, but over kind of the credits and stuff, and wasn't the best way to hear it. So the first proper time we saw the credits and the opening titles was last week, and I actually like them. When I first saw them, I was like, I'm not too sure on this. But then I watched it back on YouTube, and I actually very much like them. It's actually, yeah, no, I really like them because they give a sense of sort of, they're very reminiscent of classic series Doctor Who. The very first Doctor Who opening titles was kind of very basic visual effects in that they were kind of shapes which were caused by putting the input of the camera back through the output. Sorry, the output of the camera back through the input of the camera, and it kind of made this very loopy kind of shapes and patterns, and we're going for sort of a kaleidoscope kind of esque look here, but a very modern CGI kaleidoscope look. But that plus the titles, which also harken back to kind of classic Doctor Who, like in the first two Doctors, we kind of had the very bomb. I can't do my own voice, but very electric kind of. Well, it was radio. It was, yeah. The very original sort of Doctor Who music was very electric before the classic. The modern Doctor Who kind of went for more an orchestral feel. So this very much harkens back to that. And yeah, the whole mix is kind of a very modern take on the original kind of Doctor Who opening titles, and I kind of like that. I personally always love it when they show the Doctor's face in the credits, but again, that's not a constant throughout Doctor Who, so it's not negative, it's just not my own personal preference. But yeah, it's the opening titles are basically very reminiscent of Hartnell's titles, just modern, I guess, is what would have been the opening titles of the very first Doctor Who if it was made in 2018. So I actually kind of liked the credits. If I'm going to guess from the pattern of this last week and this week that Christian Bale decided to drop cold openings from Doctor Who, which again is also very reminiscent of classic Doctor Who, which had absolutely no cold openings except possibly Trial of a Time Lord. Unless I'm wrong, someone please correct me if I am. Or perhaps even the Five Doctors. Yeah, there was no cold opening, as in there was no pre-credit scene. Pre-titled scene. In last week's Doctor Who, there's no pre-title scene. In this week's Doctor Who, so I think Chris has dropped it, which slightly unexpected. Kind of, I'm used to Doctor Who having pre-cold openings for the last 13 years, but God, it's been a long time. I was a different person then. But yeah, no, that's not the case anymore. But again, that's not necessarily a negative thing because that's not a new thing for Doctor Who either. And yeah, just because it probably needs saying, Jodie's completely settled into the role of the Doctor, and they're absolutely they are the Doctor. I said it in my last reaction. I'm going to say it again now. They're doing a very fantastic job. Their accent, I'm not quite used to yet, which is kind of weird for me to say because I'm from Yorkshire, if not just a bit more to the west side. I don't know. I think it's something about a Yorkshire. Well, okay. I mean, it's clear why historically, if you were on British TV, you had to speak in very received pronunciation, British English, rather than you know very Northern English. So the kind of Northern accent's not very. Uh, it's very unusual, especially if you watch international TV. Um, you very rarely will hear a northern accent on sort of American TV, and even northern accents on American TV are very watered down. A recent example is Gemma Simmons in Agents of Shield. Her character is actually also from Sheffield, but she kind of has a very watered down northern accent, kind of very similar, I guess, to my own, where you can't, it's not really strong northern. Um, and the thing about northern accent is that when you hear it, I guess I'm just not used to hearing northern accents. Say technobabble. I think that's it. Like, think about how many northern characters have you seen in mainstream sci-fi? I'm struggling to think. Um, so I think there's something about that kind of northern working class accent, and there's something about Yorkshire lass accent that, again, nothing inherently wrong with being from Yorkshire or being female, but just because it's not, and for all the wrong reasons, it's not being in mainstream media, you don't really attach a sense of authority or academia to it. Hopefully this and future depictions of northern working class women in authority roles and media will sort of defeat that. But that's kind of that's kind of the thing we need to use. So I'm gonna mute this. I should have done it before I stream. I am a professional. For most part, except right now when I'm in my pajamas, so I think you can excuse me for having my sound not muted. Yeah. So yeah. I'll just say straight out. I saw someone last week tweet about the Ghost Monument, saying they loved it. I want to say it's one of the writers of Doctor Who, but I can't remember which one now. But someone tweeted saying that they loved the Ghost Monument. It very much seemed very reminiscent of classical series Doctor Who episodes. It seemed basically like a 4 serial Doctor Who episode compacted into one, however long the episode is, with a higher budget. Which I actually thought, when I actually read it, I was like, damn, that's kind of how I felt when I was watching it. And also I felt, damn, you're clearly referencing the keys of Marinus here, which is the first Doctor episode in 1964. I think, because it was still Barbara, Susan, and Ian. And yeah, it's very much that sort of simplistic Doctor Who story of having to journey from one place to the other, solving small issues. But thankfully, without the padding, I was watching the Doctor Who classic series Twitch stream over the summer. God, was that a marathon! And it's kind of, and again, this is a thing with a lot of serialized TV and a lot of TV back in the day, that it had a lot of padding because they had schedules that certain episodes to fill, and if the plot didn't fill the episode, you'd pad the episode with other stuff, other B stories, other B plots. Which is a kind of a thing. Fortunately, we don't have anymore because our TV, series are kind of more less serialized and more condensed, and so you don't necessarily have to pad it out. So it very much seemed it was like the Keys of Marinus without all the padding. And that was a good thing. And yeah, it was excellent. Noticeably, nobody died. I guess yeah, it was a good basic Doctor Who episode. I'm not someone who is I've never been like, oh, Moffat overcomplicated Doctor Who. He didn't really. His issue was that he had strong, very broad, large scale plots which didn't fit into a 45-minute episode, which now I say out loud is the description of an overcomplicated episode. But they could have worked if they had proper script editing and proper production. Moffat was a brilliant writer but a rubbish producer, has always been my analysis of his time of controlling Doctor Who. But episodes like Blink have very deep, complicated. Okay, Blink's a bad example. But there are episodes of Doctor Who that Moffat wrote which were complicated and had lots of strands, but worked very well and had a good payoff. So there's nothing wrong with doing complicated TV. The early episodes of Sherlock, and also later episodes of Sherlock, but I know they're more controversial, so I'm going to play it safe and just talk about the early episodes of Sherlock. Also had sort of complicated plots, but they worked off very well. You can do complicated stories in short amounts of time if you do it well. Perhaps not so much in a 45-minute slot, so perhaps you need at least an hour, 90 minutes. But it's always refreshing to have basic plots that let you focus more on character, which is what the last week's episode very much was. There wasn't, you know, there wasn't massive moral dilemmas to deal with. There wasn't. It was basically team had to get from point A to B and avoid obstacles. It was basically that, and it was very well done. And yeah, and then, though notably there was reference to something called the Timeless Child, and something that Shinbul, is it Shinbul or is it Shinbul? Something that whatever his name is, Chris Shinbul, yeah, it's Shinbul, said was that he wasn't have any story arcs, sort of, he wasn't have the bad wolf, girl who waited, whatever complicated, still on Earth kind of story arcs that Russell T Davies and Moffat were very very fond of. Instead, they're going to, well, he said he wasn't going to have any. But the Timeless Child does seem like a name drop of a story arc, though notably not actually mentioned in this episode. Rosa just came out, so we'll see where that goes. With the companions, I don't know. I like Yaz. Yaz seems very sort of comfortable in the role. What's her actor's name? Mandeep something. Yaz Mandeep, Doctor Who. Mandeep Gill, yeah. Is Mandeep Gill actually Pakistani? Because the character's Pakistani. You often get people playing Pakistani characters who are just generally from South Asia. Doesn't actually say where her character is from. So she could be Pakistani or she could be from somewhere. I mean, I'd say, judging from her complexion, she's probably from. She could be from Pakistan. She could also be Indian. Whatever. But no, Mandeep Gill seems the most sort of comfortable in her role so far. Bradley Walsh is getting there. It seems weird to say that for the person who's the more experienced actor out of possibly even all four. I don't know how long has Bradley Walsh been acting for compared to Jodie Whittaker. Bradley Walsh has been active. Well, he used to be a footballer. Didn't know that. Probably didn't care. Acting. So he's only actually been acting for 17 years, and he's one of those sports turned actor types. Jodie Whittaker was acting theatre 4 years later. So not actually much of a difference between Bradley Walsh and Jodie Whittaker's professional acting career. Yeah, Bradley Walsh, I guess. Bradley Walsh can be a good actor because I've seen him. I'll go back to it. His performance as the Pied Piper in Strange Adventures was spot on creepy and very, very excellently done. I'm still trying to get used. I wasn't too sure about him in the first 2 weeks. He didn't seem very. I mean, I don't say he was a terrible actor, but he's someone who you watch and he doesn't seem very involved. It doesn't seem like they've melted into the role, so you don't see. I'm not seeing Graham. I'm seeing Bradley Walsh. Same with Tosin Cole as Ryan. Again, acting. Compared to Mandeep Gill and Jodie Whittaker as Yaz and the Doctor, respectively, I see their characters rather than someone playing a character. So, but I mean, Bradley Walsh as Graham kind of seemed more at home in Rosa. So in this week's episode, so I think he's become more comfortable in the role there. Tosin Cole had moments in this episode. But again, I don't think he's kind of settled into a role yet. And then the end of I was kind of wondering and maybe a tiny bit hoping that the deal of this series would be that the Doctor would be stranded from their TARDIS the entire series, and we won't actually see the new TARDIS until the end of the series, and then have to use other ways of travelling, which has precedent in Doctor Who. There was a period, I think about 4 episodes in the Fourth Doctor era, where they didn't have access to the TARDIS, and so they travelled using different methods. I think it was episodes that revolve around I forget the name of the spaceship now, but it was a Simon episode, a Dalek episode, Genesis Daleks, whatever the 7 episodes following that was, the one with the weird monster in bubble wrap, green bubble wrap. So I was hoping to have an entire series about the TARDIS. Not that I don't obviously love the TARDIS, but yeah. But no, I mean we saw the TARDIS at the end, and I like it. It's not probably not my favorite TARDIS design, but it does seem it's very much. I don't know actually. I don't dislike it. I like it. I just can't tell you what I like about it yet. I think we haven't seen really much of it. I think my favorite TARDIS so far was the one which Peter Capaldi's Doctor ended with, very much just because it was very functional and I like sort of functional use spaceships. But it is a different design. I'm still not a fan of. By speaking of new design, I'm not a fan of the new aspect ratio. I'm not a big fan of Univisium. I don't think you can. Yeah, I mean the idea. I feel. Your image should fill the screen it was intended for. So if you're filming for TV, which almost certainly will be 16:9, unless you're one of those people who can afford a wider 2-to-1 ratio TV, and that's still very much a minority, not the norm, then I feel you should shoot for TV 16:9. Otherwise, you're just forcing people to have black bars, and you're missing out on image. The cinematography otherwise is very good and very different, and I like it. And I think that new anamorphic lenses do benefit Doctor Who. But yeah, no, last week's episode was fine. No, it was good. I liked it. Very reminiscent of, and so this week's episode was a historical based episode, and very reminiscent of historical based episodes of the classic series. Now, a lot of this series has been I liked Moffat when he initially came on board because he wanted to make Doctor Who more science fantasy or more sort of fairy tale, which he felt was kind of the feel and tone Doctor Who had in the classic series. And I agreed with his sort of assessment there, and I was glad that he sort of took that take on Doctor Who. I mean, it kind of evolved into its own sort of thing. Shinbel, again, I think is actually trying to go for a more classical Doctor Who feeling. Kind of not reboot, not sort of ignoring the last 2 showrunner eras of Doctor Who, but kind of taking inspiration more, as if he was bringing Doctor Who new to modern series straight from the cancellation in 1989. But I think he's also bringing back some of the problems. So a lot of this week's episode, I know it's weird. He's sort of bringing back a lot of the feel of classical Doctor Who, which also includes a lot of the. I mean, kind of the whole, a lot of it who is cheesy and sort of affectionately so. And I think a lot of that cheesiness has kind of been brought back, and again affectionately so. But there's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of this has been happened. A lot of time talking about things about the civil rights movement, which is very much for the audience benefit, and very much it telling you, hey, by the way, here's context of historical facts that happened, which is good. I mean, we should all obviously be very appreciative of the civil rights movement, but it so, and again, it's going back to Tosin Coles and Bradley Walsh's kind of acting rather than melting into the role acting. So when they're talking about things, it's kind of very on the nose. And Doctor Who has always been about social commentary. Don't get me wrong, it's always been progressive, and we should always remember that. And that's a core part of Doctor Who. I'm not saying let's not talk about social action. I'm just saying it needs to be less on the nose, because I feel like if you talk about if you use art has always been social commentary, but it's used best when it's subtle enough that the audience is given the chance and encouraged to think about it themselves, rather than being told about it. I mean, obviously there is a right and wrong conclusion you shouldn't come with. You shouldn't watch an episode about civil rights and think, I don't think that civil rights movement was a good idea. You should always come to the conclusion that civil rights is always a good idea. But I think you should always also encourage them to come to that conclusion itself. That way the message is conveyed stronger. That was kind of my thing about this episode, in that you were very much told what you were meant to think, and while it was the right thing you were told to think, let people come to that conclusion themselves. Is what I'm saying. But other than that, I mean, the production value was good. There was very strong on the point moments about how kind of different it is between, how much we've come from back then to now. Well, of course, everyone should remember we still have a long way to go. We've nowhere near reached equal racial equality, or indeed any equality for minority groups. But on that note, actually, can we please stop the thing about minority groups going back in time and completely being ignorant of. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's actually another instance of this, but I mean, it was quite annoying to see Ryan not expect to face racial abuse going back to pre-civil rights movement America. It kind of paints. You can't be a person of color and be of that age and be ignorant about, especially when it's established how much of a fan of social action his nan was. You can't be that much aware and that woke and the minority group go back in time and forget that racism was worse. But I mean, I don't know if that's actually happened in any other form of medium for me to be like, well, we need to stop doing that. But it was a bit cheesy, though it does bring to light how much white privilege you need to travel through time. I imagine if we ever do invent time travel, well, yeah, it is. I mean, historically, freedom of travel has been a privilege of those with, those who have been white and male. But yeah, it is very sweet that we have an episode of mainstream sci-fi that like every time we saw Rosa Parks, there was very heroic music. I mean, call it virtue signaling if you want, but I think it's nice that we can recognize someone like that in such a heroic manner that they deserve, because it was a heroic move. Yeah, again, the episode was very episodes was very basic as it had to be. Which, I mean, I don't know, maybe too basic. There wasn't so much of the conflict. There wasn't so much conflict. You weren't really on. It's not on your seat stuff. But maybe that'll come later. It is the first 3 episodes of the new series. It don't tend to be that kind of high stake-ish. And it would be nice to know kind of more of the motivation behind that time agent guy, other than he hates black people. I mean, that is, a thing. Well, you do get, I mean, we there are Nazis, and they hate black people, and they're all for white supremacy. But I think if you paint in media Nazis as that black and white, you forget that in reality we have Nazis and they're not mustache twiddling villains that are easy to spot. They're often more subtle and nuanced than that. But perhaps that would have been a bit too on the nose. But again, I mean, Star Trek Discovery, which is fantastic, does a brilliant job of social commentary of the current sort of state of social imbalance in America and the rest of the world. Yeah, I think that's all I had to ramble on about. It's surprising that I've actually talked for 24 minutes about this. I think you'd never think you have as much to say. What we will end on is, I'll mute my mic, so sorry if you get binged by notifications, is the trailer for the next episode of Doctor Who. Now, I don't like this. In the last couple of episodes, when the first episode ended with a trailer which basically just showed all the guest stars of the following series, which wasn't really a trailer, it was an advert. Which I realised how stupid that sounds, because trailers are adverts, but it wasn't telling me about the plot, it was telling me about who they managed to pay to get in the episodes, which I don't really care about as much. Last week, the trailer for this episode was very short. It was over before it started, and the trailer for next week's episode again was over before it started. I think it was like 10-15 seconds long. But I mean, short, you can do very short form trailers, but they're not edited very well. Like a lot of the trailers So in the last 13 years, trailers for the next episode of Doctor Who have always been like 30 seconds long. And they play over the part of the trailer which is da na 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 na. And those have been the full trailers. Now what they're doing is they're showing like a 10-second trailer in the episode, and then they're releasing a 30-second trailer either between episodes, after the episode's broadcast on or on YouTube. But I've seen 10-second trailers of Doctor Who for the last couple of series that are released, between episodes, and they've been edited very well. The ones which are shown in the end of these episodes aren't edited very well. I'm not really sure what's happening. It's just kind of select scenes, but without any sort of. A trailer has to tell a story, has to convey a message. Any piece of work, no matter small, has to always convey something, and they're not really conveying anything to me. However, enough of that. Let's watch the full kind of trailer for this episode.
Big spider problem in this city, Raz. Got to be home. Big spider problem in this city, Raz. Got to be home.
Home, Daisy.
Tell me exactly what's going on, omitting no detail, no matter how strange. Don't forget to click the.
Well, see, I already know it wasn't 30 seconds because then we've got the outro, the video. That's actually the same length of the one in the episode. It was just a bit different because the one in the episode had a bit where we saw Yaz's mum, whilst here it was this other stuff. I mean, where was it?
Tell me exactly what's going on, and
that's creepy. The spider. Ooh, that makes me shiver. Doesn't tell me much except next week's episode's about giant spiders. And it's probably gonna be a bit spoopy. Which I guess is fitting because it's Halloween weekend next week. But doesn't really, I guess, tell me much. But it's not much I can analyze in this. I guess this guy dies. That's about it. Probably, whoever he is. So yeah, those were my thoughts on Ghost Monument and Rosa. How do you think Doctor Who's going 3 episodes into this series? And what did you think of the opening titles and the new music? I've been Harris Qureshi, and I'll see you guys all next week.